Hello, everyone. This is JVL here with my best friend, Sarah Longwell, publisher of the Bulwark. Sarah.
My guy.
No news. We're not going to talk about any news today. We're only going to talk about big, gigantic thought things. And the reason we're doing this is because we're taping on Thursday because you have to travel to Toronto in
We got a live show.
For a live show. But I'm telling people, I just want you all to know, we're still releasing it on Friday, which means you will get Rebecca.
The most important piece. Important piece. Why don't you tell the people why you're not joining us in Toronto, JVL? It's me, Tim, and Sam.
Because I do a lot. I'm just trying to think about how to explain. So I am in my heart an actuary. Another thing that I could have done in life was I could have been an actuary.
You would have been a great actuary.
I think about risk all the time.
Yeah.
All the time. And I try to balance it against reward.
JVL actuary, you're going to die soon and you're going to die fast and it's going to be terrible.
Probably. Anyway, I just, when you cross a border, you basically lose all of your rights. In the administration, at the physical place of a border, even as a United States citizen, you have many less rights than you do at any other place in America. And I am not going to make myself hostile to assumptions that the Trump administration will adhere to the rule of law as it applies to my habeas corpus as I'm crossing a border. No fucking way.
Okay. JVL. Things are bad in America, but he's staying in America. No, we're going to Canada. It's going to be great. Can't wait to see the Mounties. I've only been to Canada like one time in my life, and it was just a friend's cabin. And so this is my first time in Toronto, and I'm pumped about it.
Toronto's a great city.
Oh, well, never been.
Toronto's a great city. So
sorry you won't be with me.
That's, you know what? You'll see me for the other two live
shows. That's good. I'll have my new best friend, Sam Stein.
Sam, single white femaling me. That's okay. I have my new best friend, Heather.
Deep cut that nobody else even gets.
Okay. So we promised we were going to talk about how to fix things and why they can't be fixed. But first, I wanted to talk about this interview that Isaac Chotiner did in the New Yorker with Cass Sunstein. Cass Sunstein, for people who don't know, is an academic, a very, very mainstream neoliberal type. I have always thought incredibly smart. Written tons of books, tons of scholarly articles, worked in the Reagan administration, worked in the Obama administration. He's a political scientist. I think he's also a lawyer.
He is. He's married to Samantha Power.
Oh, yeah, married to Samantha Power. Anyway, I like him very much. And Isaac, he has a new book out, which he almost called Big Tent Liberalism. And the idea behind it is that he is, in the face of the authoritarian attempt that is ongoing in America, he has been reevaluating all of the sides. And he, like, I think, myself and probably you, is no longer really interested in left versus right, but is interested in up versus down, with up being liberal and down being illiberal. Mm-hmm. And he makes the case that we ought to really expand our definitions of liberal, what liberal means. So, like, it does encompass everybody, he says, from Martin Luther King to George Washington and Alexander Hamilton to JFK to Friedrich Hayek to Ronald Reagan to George W. Bush. He doesn't say George W. Bush, although maybe he does in the book. But makes the case basically like we've all basically been liberals all along. And it's time for us to recognize that because now there's an actual illiberal threat. Am I summing this up correctly?
Well, neither of us have read the book. We've only read the interview. But one of the things that is made clear is that he either does not ever mention Trump, or if he mentions him, only very sparingly.
Doesn't talk a lot. He talks in very big, broad philosophical terms, which I understand. I guess. And Chotiner then begins picking away. So I would say, here's my experience with reading the article. So I am there for Sunstein's argument. Like that, like I'm reading Sunstein's summation about Big Tent liberalism, and I'm like, yeah, get him. Go get him, buddy. Yeah, Cass. Because that's basically how I view the world.
Sure.
Right. And Chotiner starts trying to pick that apart. And he says, so, for instance, Hayek, I think it's Hayek, I don't have it in front of me, did support a coup in, I forget, it was Peru or Argentina.
Chile or Argentina.
Chile, right. Somewhere in South America. He was pro-coup. This other guy, Murray Rothbard, who you say is a liberal, he wanted anarcho-capitalism, or, you know, he wanted to overthrow the US
that's Nozick, but Murray Rothbard had some very, I think, bad opinions on race, I believe.
Yes, bad opinions on race, but I think was also wanted to like overthrow the government because he was such a libertarian. He wound up like as a Lou Rockwell guy. And he points out Reagan running for governor in California, talking about how businesses should be allowed to discriminate against black people if they want to. And I think that Isaac's point I think the point he's trying to make is that actually we're retconning. These guys weren't really liberals. And I see what he's saying, but I also don't think I agree with it. And I just want to I want to hear you go. And I was hoping we could hash it out because I don't really know what I fully think about this, but I think I know. And I want to dialogue with you about
it. So I read it, and I got to say what you described a little bit, where I started the interview thinking, this is a book for me. Right. This is a book that talks about liberalism in the biggest, broadest context and allows us to see where the lines are. Right. And I think my assumption going into it is that that Trump, while not a discussed character, is like the thing that hovers over the entire book, because one writes about what the contours actually are. And he also is going through his own sense of, hey, look, I used to regard people like Hayek and even Ronald Reagan as people who were not my political allies, but I realize now that actually they are my political allies because we all exist within this framework. And he kind of lays out, again, not in the book, but in the interview, that there is kind of a tentpole set of issues that make one committed to liberalism, and that is
freedom, the rule
free
of
markets. It's not free markets. It's pluralism,
right.
The rule of law, and pluralism, and free speech.
Freedom.
And free speech. Okay. So, and then, but it sounded like in the interview he also threw in at other times things like human rights, But he was critical, and I think one of the reasons he's talking about Hayek and von Mises and Nozick and Murray Rothbard, like a lot of these are libertarians who push everybody kind of, let's assume that politics is on a linear spectrum, which it is not, but for the purposes of argument,
sure.
Further to the right or further to the place of, like, when you say anarcho-capitalism, like a lot of what we're talking about is just like markets are everything. Like they are the thing that we sort of live and die by. Whereas, of course, I think modern conservatism, the one that we grew up in, is like very free market forward, but not without some constraints, like, and not without, not without some idea that you need order. Like anarcho-capitalism, I always am like, so we don't have stoplights then, huh?
Nope.
Like we don't have
nope.
The libertarian argument is one that's fun for all of us when we're 19, and then we grow up and you go, actually society can't work that way. And so I myself went through my Ayn Rand, my von Mises, a period of my life. I think there is a lot about Hayek, to recommend itself. And so I was like kind of there for his, I have evolved on this to see that we're all, because this is where I do think we are right in the moment, is that's kind of the point of the Never Trumpers to some degree, is actually because we believe in free speech, because we believe in liberal democracy, because we believe that Trump is illiberal.
Right.
That is why he cannot and should not be tolerated. It was always his threat to the liberal, and by liberal, I mean small L liberalism, or do I mean big L liberalism?
Small
Which
L.
one's the big and the small? The
L.
small L liberalism. And so Trump is like an inherently illiberal figure. And that is why Never Trumpers happened, where we didn't care that he just was like, yeah, I'm going to cut taxes and regulations. Like that wasn't enough to compensate for all the damage he was doing to the liberal order. So I was like, this is probably for me. Maybe I'm going to go read this book. Then Chotiner does start to, and here's the thing, Isaac Chotiner, don't ever call me for an interview. I won't do it. You murder people in your interviews. You are a credibility destroyer for everyone who wanders into your zone. He just brutalizes Cass Sunstein in this interview in a way that it made it look like Sunstein had a thesis that he hadn't reckoned hard enough with, because his defense of liberalism sort of said, okay, my big tent liberalism includes Justice Thomas and Alito, because you don't ever see them put pen to paper to say, Donald Trump is a king. And I was like, okay, but wait a minute. When you remove the guardrails so that Donald Trump
they haven't put pen to paper to say that yet, Sarah.
Yeah, but I don't know. I mean, it depends on how one interprets the decision to say that Donald Trump cannot be prosecuted or held accountable for any official acts in office. And so, like, I don't know, when you remove that level of accountability that allows him to be more effective in his authoritarian project, I found his defense of his own work deeply wanting. And I couldn't tell. And this is my general, I could not tell if I read the book, if I would find it compelling, or because he's just making, what I think is probably, I think he can make a pretty defensible argument for his point. I think the question comes, if you draw the lines around what is liberalism, then, I think that the disagreement starts to be, and Chotner's disagreement with him is this. It's like, okay, well, who's in that? Who plays inside those lines and who plays outside those lines? And I think that Chotner's, where he's playing gotcha, I think quite effectively, is he starts throwing people out as chum to be like, okay, in or out, your idea of liberalism. Right. And Sunstein kept being like, oh, in. And he's like, but what about this thing where they, were super duper racist or supported a coup or, are Henry Kissinger?
Right.
And I thought it raised a bunch of questions that actually made me want to see if Castine was better in his book than he is in the interview. Because I actually came away from the interview thinking, I thought that was a very poor defense of his thesis.
Not his best, but this is why I also would not participate in a phone interview with Isaac Chotiner. I'd be happy to do an email interview or a text interview, because I have tremendous respect for the power of mediums and for people who are really masters of their medium. And so there are, like, Bill O'Reilly, whatever else you want to say about Bill O'Reilly, he understood how to do his show. And anybody who walked onto that set, it didn't matter how smart you were. Like, he knew how to make the show work, and he could just embarrass you if he wanted to. And I think the same is true with Chotiner. I am not actually comparing Chotiner to Bill O'Reilly. I'm just saying that he's really, really good at having very pointed interviews and catching people off guard. And I do not do that often, in the same way, like, I don't debate often. And so I would not participate in something like that. I'm real good at writing, though. And so if he ever wants to interview me over text, happy to do that. Like, I feel like there aren't a whole lot of people who I fear in print. So,
yeah, I was mainly making a joke. Actually, Isaac Chotiner interviewed me. I'll talk to you all day long. I don't care.
Yeah, I know. You don't duck anyone. But here's what I say. So I want to grant Chotner's point because I think he's right in some sense, but I think in the larger sense he's not. And I wind up with basically three things I would point out. The first is that whenever you're talking about anything, there are very few people who are all the way in on liberalism, right? Like everybody is a little inconsistent, right? Everybody has blind spots. Everybody has things where later in life maybe they reconsider, right? And what you're really talking about is the preponderance of evidence. Like you're talking like, on the whole, were they in support of liberalism or not? And the second piece is that everybody is a product of their time and place. And this isn't an excuse, but it is an important to understand because we are all products of our time and place. And 100 years from now, if somebody were to pull up things that we've written, I don't know what it will be that will look offensive, but something will look benighted and stupid. And it's just because this is the soup we swim in. And the third is that there is what's that line about pornography, like the Supreme Court line?
I know it when I see it.
You know it when you see it, right? Yeah. And I think the three of those combine to make it a little, I know it when I see it. And so I would view...
It was the difference between pornography and art.
Right. So I absolutely disdain libertarians. Like I have no use for them. But on the other hand, there's a difference between some 75-year-old academic who's just jerking off in a book about abstract ideas and somebody who is summoning an armed mob to the Capitol and attempting to overthrow the government. They are not both the same level of illiberal, And so I get...
Yeah, but sorry, who's your 75-year-old? Is it
like
Cass?
the Murray Rothbard type?
Okay.
Yeah, or Hayek or somebody like that.
Uh-huh.
I'm not saying that makes them all the way in, but just that there is a little bit of like, so a guy who's always obeying the law, a guy who is never actually attempting to overthrow the government, a guy who is sort of in his daily life totally liberal, but he just makes these jerking off motion, like stupid abstract dorm room session BS arguments about why we should overthrow the... I'm a little less...
Well, I don't know that I mean, again, sometimes I'm like, we're just going to go off this interview and not actually read the book. That's a little bit of tough sledding. But I don't know if the coup that Hayek
coup is
supported,
worse than the Murray Rothbard books and his blogs on lourothwell.org. Yes.
Although I think Hayek had better ideas overall than Murray Rothbard.
Right.
So I don't know. Road to Serfdom was quite influential for me in a way that, part of what was tough for old Cass here is that Isaac Chotiner had done his research. And so he kept hitting him with facts about the guys that he'd just written about that he was like, oh, I didn't know he did that. Or I didn't know he said that. I didn't know he was wildly biased against Near Easterners, Indian.
But you see what I'm saying with the preponderance of this gets back to all the founding fathers shit, right? They're almost all slave owners.
Yeah.
Right. Mm-hmm. And yet they believe in these Enlightenment ideas about liberalism. There is nobody's really all the way in or all the way out. Everybody is straddling. And so we're judging by the preponderance of mixed with understandings about the place and time. And I think it's when you see somebody who's truly illiberal, it's not a close call. You don't have to go and parse everything they ever said. When you see the real illiberals, it's just coming out of their pores.
Yeah, I guess, though, if you write a book endeavoring to sort of draw the lines, Like that's the point of the book. And like you're saying, no, actually here are the people who are in. And I'm saying who's in so that I can contrast it with who's out. And then suddenly the people who are in actually have like big strokes against the fundamental tenets you lay out. I don't know. The thing is that maybe based on the interview, I thought he had a thesis with which I agree and a defense that I thought was like comedic.
Would you agree that Ronald Reagan is in?
Of course, I would.
So I would too. This is what I'm saying, right? I mean, I just like, again, have read the book. We do a lot of these, but like,
so I think the reason that the what's his name Kissinger stuff really lands isn't because I think it betrayed in Sunstein a bit of a lightweightness around the argument, because what he does is he says they were like, well, you're good friends with Henry Kissinger, and
that's a rough. So please explain to the people how that goes.
I should grab it and read it because but basically he says, okay, well you and your wife were good friends with Henry Kissinger, who I think a lot of liberals would say is a war criminal because of what he did in Vietnam and Cambodia. And this is where I will wander in. So I'll just say up front, I do not know enough. This is before my time, and I could go back and study it, but I haven't. Whether or not Henry Kissinger is a war criminal or just had some bad idea, whatever, I can't parse that on this podcast. But I certainly know that Henry Kissinger is reviled for some of the things that he did in Vietnam and then the bombings in Cambodia. And I think that the push, so he's pushing on this particular thing. He's like, is he in or out? And Sunstein says he's in, and then says, I can't really evaluate. Like his level of evaluation of Kissinger rivals mine. Like he couldn't tell you whether he is illiberal or not, but he can tell you that he once came to his book party about when he wrote his Star Wars book, which by the way is when I was like, oh, this is why JVL wants to talk about this guy, because this guy wrote a book about Star Wars being,
not true.
Okay.
Not true.
Okay. And so he's like, well, he's a very generous friend. He was a very busy man. He came to my book party and he said a nice thing to me. And the killer in the interview, and this is where Isaac Chotiner just opens your inside with a saw. He includes the final line from Sunstein. He says he thanks him for the interview, and then includes the line that Sunstein says right after he's been thanked, where he says, maybe go light on the Kissinger stuff. It'll distract people from my main point. And,
you don't include that unless you're knifing the guy.
Yeah.
And this is, there's nothing wrong with knifing people in print. It's something I have done from time to time. It's something I imagine I will do in the future.
Doesn't sound like you.
The thing is, you always, if you're a professional, you never do it by accident, right? You don't knife somebody accidentally. It's not like, oh, I hit him with an elbow while I did. Oh, so sorry. I didn't mean that. Right. Chotiner knew what he was doing there.
Oh yeah.
But
actually, I found that part kind of instructive and interesting. And can I tell you why?
Mm-hmm.
I was thinking about this, and I don't know whether or not it's worth me saying out loud in what context I was thinking about this, but I do think that you and I have had, because we broke with many of our old friends, who I think there was a period of time where we thought they were normal people, and there are people that maybe we respected at a time, or were our elders as we were coming up in the conservative movement, who we watched get on an authoritarian train, and just a bullet train, and betray every value they ever taught to us. Mm-hmm. And now are publicly poisoning the discourse and or selling out in big and specific ways in order to get their own bag of cash, but at the expense of the country and an expense of the liberalism that they say that they defend. And I could say about a great many of those people, nice guy, was at my wedding, gave me a nice present, sent something to my kids when they were born. And I don't know that I think that, though. And this is, I think you and I do agree on this. Again, this isn't about like, it's not that I've cut these people out of my life, or it's not that but I won't lie about the damage that they're doing. Yeah. And I just think that this idea of like, well, it goes back to when you're kids. You ever when you're kids and you're saying to one of your friends, like, yeah, but that guy's such a jerk. And they're like, well, he's always nice to me. Mm-hmm. And you're like,
what does that mean?
but still like bad in general. Right. And I sort of, it's just that. And so I guess I find that to be it's a little bit of a Washington failing almost. Like it's kind of Washington brain to be like, well, I know Mitch McConnell and like, he's not a monster. And you're like, okay, like probably he doesn't stab you with a knife when he sees you.
Okay, bad example, because I think Mitch probably does stab people with knives when he sees them. pick somebody else. Try Paul Ryan. Paul Ryan seems like a nice enough human being. Mitch McConnell. Yeah,
but I don't think Paul Ryan is a good one, actually, because Paul Ryan has, I would say his net contributions to the negativity have been so much less than the people I'm talking to, or that I'm talking about. I'm talking about, many of the people I'm talking about like Rich Lowry, or worse than that, much worse than that. Many people who work in the administration who are actively looking for ways to help Donald Trump like take this project and bring it forward contra everything they've ever said that they believed.
Yeah. I want to say something briefly about Kissinger, because I think I'm going to get savage for this in the comments.
Oh, do you want to take it behind the paywall?
Okay. Let's do that. I will mount my quasi kind of, not really a defense, but a series of line drawings around Henry Kissinger behind the paywall. And then we're going to talk about why nothing can be fixed after this moment and how Sarah's going to fix it.
Okay, but I'll just say, for those of you who get mad when we go behind the paywall, we have so few products that we paywall. Like if you want to go to daily, if you look at all the other products, they are paywalled within an inch of their lives. We make almost everything free. We have a couple things behind the paywall so that you will subscribe and ride with us. We are mostly running an information charity, but not this part. So help support the work that we do and come listen to the other half of this convo.
Yeah, help support me defending history's greatest monster, Henry Kissinger.